Maybe you're thinking about starting to get into songwriting, or you have already started your songwriting journey and along the way have sort of asked yourself, oh boy, now that I'm writing lyrics, does my vocabulary matter? Because I didn't really care for vocabulary back in the day in English classes and all that, and I'm not necessarily sure that my vocabulary is that large. Does it matter? And I think the short answer to that question is yes, it does matter, but also sort of no, or we can make it matter a lot less by doing things a certain way. Let's talk about it. So before we talk about how to mitigate our situation, if we currently don't have a very big vocabulary, let's talk about why vocabulary does matter as lyricists. And the first thing we need to answer is, well, what is a vocabulary? Well, basically, it's just the amount of words that we know, right? It's the amount of words that we can pull from. If there's a pool of words that we have access to in our brain, that's what our vocabulary is. So when we have a big vocabulary, that allows us to not be limited in our words that we can use, but we can actually be more precise about exactly what we're trying to say because we know more words, and therefore we can identify a more precise, more accurate word than maybe the more generic and overused version of the word. So let's take the word want, for example. One thing that I want is I want to someday write a book trilogy. But something else that I want is to do a lot of songwriting. One of those things I may never actually get to because it will never be a high enough priority. But songwriting, I honestly get kind of cranky if I go even like 3 days without doing any songwriting because it's how I process things. So when I say I want to do songwriting, that is something that I have this visceral desire for that I will push other things aside in order to accomplish. Whereas when I say I want to write a fiction book trilogy, that's kind of just like a, hey, maybe someday if I have time, I'd like to do that. But if I'm being really honest with myself, there's a good chance I will never have time to actually do that. But yet I would use the word want for both of those. So what does that mean? Well, that means that want is a fairly generic and not very meaningful word because there's such a wide gap between what somebody could mean by the word want. But with a bigger vocabulary, we can have access to more words that are synonymous with the word want. For example, we could have need, crave, prefer, require, wish, ache, aspire, covet, long, lust, thirst, pine, yearn, and hunger. Those are all different words that vaguely mean want, but they're all much more particular and precise. You might say that you crave ice cream, which would be more precise than just saying that you want ice cream. Of course you want ice cream. Who doesn't want ice cream? Basically just people who are lactose intolerant, probably. But if you crave ice cream, that is talking about a very specific feeling. It's that feeling of, man, I just can't get my mind off of ice cream specifically. I might be hungry, I might not be hungry, but what I want really badly and what I will be distracted by until I get it is ice cream. What if I said I need ice cream? If I said I need ice cream, that just seems super overdramatic, right? You can't possibly need ice cream. We maybe need love and shelter and food and water, but we don't need ice cream. What about require? If I use the word require, that I require ice cream, there's a connotation that I am actually asking or demanding that someone else get ice cream for me because I'm requiring it of someone. I'm not requiring it of myself usually. So that means something totally different than, say, me saying that I wish for ice cream. If I wish for ice cream, that might just be sort of my last thought before I drift off to sleep. It might even be that I kind of wish for ice cream, but I'm already upstairs. I'm in bed. I don't want to go downstairs all the way down those 12 steps to go all the way to the freezer. That's another 12 steps from the bottom of the stairs in order to eat ice cream. Too much work. That might be a wish, right? It's not really that strong of a desire. It's just sort of a fleeting thought that's like, it'd be cool to have ice cream right now, but who could bother? So overall, of course, words matter as lyricists because words are how we communicate things. That should be, in theory, self-evident. So if words matter, then of course a vocabulary matters, because a vocabulary means that you have more words to pull from. If I have a vocabulary of 20,000 words and you have a vocabulary of 50,000 words, then you're going to be better equipped to think of the right words to use in order to communicate to me what you're trying to say. And in song lyrics, of course, that is going to be useful. But what if our current vocabulary isn't very good? Are we toast? Are we screwed? No. I think there are two basic things that we can do to really help mitigate and improve over time our vocabulary. One of these things is going to help us to make vocabulary a little less relevant to how well our songs and our lyrics specifically come out. And the other one is going to be a really easy way to grow our vocabulary over time. So first, let's talk about how to grow our vocabulary over time. I found that one of the easiest, most painless ways to do this is simply to get in the habit of, whenever you hear or read a word that you don't understand, just get in the habit of actually looking it up right then and there, especially if it wouldn't be rude to maybe the person talking. If it's something on the TV, of course, the TV is not going to get offended. But if it's a good friend, maybe you can even pull your phone up while they're talking to you because, hey, you're good friends. How offended could they possibly be? The main point here is just get in the habit of, whenever you hear a word that you don't know, make sure you seek the knowledge, whether it's asking the person you're talking to, hey, you just said this word, what does that mean? Don't be embarrassed to ask that question. Or we have this magical device in all of our pockets that has access to the internet. So you can just type in something like malice definition right then and there and figure it out. Now, that's a great way to develop our vocabulary over time in a slightly more active, intentional way, without actually having to do things like sign up for dictionary.com's word of the day and all that, which that can be useful as well. But what is the way to sort of make it so that right now we can still write great lyrics and not be hindered by our lack of vocabulary? Well, I think the best way to avoid this is to do what I call iterative lyric writing, or iterative lyric editing. And the basic idea of this is that first you look at your lyrics and then you take the weakest section and you keep updating that section until you make it better. And then you do it by line. And then the main thing we're talking about here is eventually you update by word. So you look at a line that you have in your lyric that feels a little weak or feels like this could probably be worded better, and you actually go through literally every word and look it up in a thesaurus. And I would recommend using thesaurus.com because we live in the 21st century. So why would you even have a paper thesaurus? If you do, no judgment. I'm just saying it would be quicker in thesaurus.com. But I utilize that all the time. I just make sure that I'm using the best, most precise word. And sometimes I even go down entire rabbit trails of like, oh, actually, this word's a little bit better. So then I actually take the other word that I found under the synonyms in thesaurus.com, and then I put that in thesaurus.com to find synonyms of that word to see if it starts to branch out even a little more and starts to get even more precise to what I'm trying to say. So overall, yes, of course, your vocabulary matters. And of course, when it comes to efficiency in writing and generally being a better writer, it's helpful to know more words so that you don't need to utilize thesaurus.com as much and you're not as overly reliant on it. And maybe you only need it for some lines and maybe you can be closer to getting it right, not necessarily the first time when we're writing our lyrics, but in earlier drafts or in earlier versions, rather than just relying on utilizing a thesaurus all the time. But in the meantime, we can certainly look up literally every word because, hey, how many words are really in our songs? And discount words like the and and stuff like that because, well, there's no thesaurus synonym for that, right? Like, we're not going to find a synonym for the. But we can find synonyms for things like love or hate or sadness or things like that, where we can actually get more precise about what it is we're trying to say. So if you're interested in that concept, be sure to check out my 6-step lyric writing checklist. It talks about the 6 steps that I go through when I'm writing my lyrics to break down lyric writing into smaller baby steps that are a lot easier to accomplish and make it so that our final result is more likely to be something that we can be proud of. Because honestly, if we find ourselves just staring at a blank page saying, improvise poetry, Joseph, then of course we're setting ourselves up to fail. That's asking ourselves to do too much. So breaking it down into smaller steps is super helpful. And one of those steps is the iterative lyric editing that I just mentioned. So be sure to check that out if you're interested. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. I'll talk to you in the next one.